Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. You bypass the Apple upcharge, $2.99 per month. Communicate with other Heat fans all day long, all night long. They were doing it until like 4 in the morning last night. Check it out. We've got 11 different channels, and we have stage shows there, which are exclusive to Off the Floor. You can't get them anywhere else. A link right here in the description. Click on it, pay, and you're in. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. PrizePicks.com, the Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. You can play NHL, NBA, NFL paired between 2 and 4 players together. Again, put down $5. You get 50 to play right away. There are no catches. PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Miami Heat coming off of a big win, more than 40-point win against the Los Angeles Lakers, who did not really come to compete. That's one of the reasons that it's a little hard to evaluate this because we've been waiting for a Heat offensive explosion against someone. So we're not going to diminish it too much. But when you watch back on some of the tape of what the Lakers were doing, Rui Hachimura, some of their defenders, I'm not really sure. LeBron in the postgame locker room obviously was not pleased with the overall effort. Neither was JJ Redick, who, at first was kind of, I don't know, he sounded like he was more holding the players accountable. Then he made sure to hold himself accountable. I don't want to watch First Take right now because it's going to be ugly under any circumstances when the Lakers don't play well, but particularly when it's a former ESPN employee who's now the coach. And, of course, you've got them losing by 41 points to a team in Miami that they don't really talk about much unless they're the opponent of the Lakers. So, anyway, enough of the Lakers. But the other story was Tyler Herro. And whether or not you're playing against a great defense or no defense at all, when you make 7 consecutive threes, in one quarter, you've done something, particularly because he didn't start the game that well. There's a contingent of chirpers on Twitter, what formerly known as Twitter, who just wait for Tyler to miss one shot to kind of confirm a previous narrative that should no longer exist. And they were all over it because, again, Bam came to play in this game, and I thought Jimmy was engaged from the very beginning. And so it was kind of Tyler who was lagging. And then all of a sudden, he completely blew up. And not only that, it looked like he was talking to the assistant coach, Nate McMillan, who used to be a head coach in the NBA. But he was feeling himself, and for good reason. Because if Spo had put him back in the game in the fourth, he might have set all kinds of records for three-point shooting. So let's just start here, Brady, as we go forward on this, because there's one thing to do it there against that team that is going to get more attention, by the way, and it's going to help his all-star case because the only things that matter are things that you do against the Celtics and the Lakers. But the question is, how does he continue to play at a high level, not make seven threes in a quarter, but play at a high level now that he is kind of the marked man on this team? It's been Jimmy for the past few years. But Tyler's the leading scorer. Tyler's been the most consistent scorer. And Tyler's putting up numbers, as we're going to look at, that are right there this year with Donovan Mitchell, better than Devin Booker, who we're going to see on Saturday in a lot of ways, right there with Dame. He's outplayed Maxey. His numbers are there with just about pretty much any two guard in the league this year. How does this continue when teams are now focused on him.
Yeah, so I think the key, at least early in the season for me, was going to be if he could sustain the shot profile. And we're a fourth of the way into the season, he's sustained it. And I think that's the key here of like sustaining this level of play and maintaining the shot making. And it's keeping it. I was just wondering if he would kind of linger more into the mid range or maybe not take as many, layups. I think the 3-point attempts are probably going to stay pretty steady, but he's stayed away from the mid ranges. Like he's really turned those into layups, and it's allowed him to kind of get cleaner looks from three. So I think that's number one. It was funny hearing from Spo after the game talking about, I wish he would have got 20 attempts. Like I wish he could start getting up that many 3-point attempts because I really think it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not, because I really think he knows that if Tyler's getting up 20 attempts, it's probably better for their offense than, for the ball to be spread around, especially when he's in that type of flow. So I think that's the key, is that he has to continue taking these shots. And so the question was about good teams, kind of the way he's defending it. And there was a key last night in there was two of his 7 threes in the third quarter that I think stand out to me, and like the leaps he's taking, where the Lakers for 2 out of the 7 possessions decided to guard him and pretty much decided to switch and try to. One of them was Anthony Davis switching on him. The other one was Hachimura. And instead of taking the switch or refusing the screen, he just stays behind the pocket of the screen and just shoots from deep. And it's kind of his counter now. And it's what all the great shooters have done. It's what Steph did. It's funny enough because I've seen a lot of people talk about Derek White's done it. Derek White has kind of mastered that in his role. But Tyler's doing this thing now where he's kind of a long range shooter where he's shooting from deep a lot more than he did before. Like a lot of his threes early in his career was right at the line, and he was really good at it, obviously. But now he's kind of extending his range. And part of that is because the shot change in the shot base and kind of keeping those things a little bit tighter. He's able to kind of shoot, cleaner from deep. But him able to do that and have that counter to a switch, I think was probably the most important thing for his 3-point shooting, because that was kind of the way a lot of teams would flatten him out. It wasn't just blitzing and getting the ball out of his hands, because he can make those reads now at this stage. It was more so, okay, if we put a decent defender and switch onto you, what are you going to do in an isolation? And he's kind of said, he's shown he can isolate. He's actually had a lot of, much better in isolation this year. But he's kind of saying, like, I don't need to get into an isolation play. I can just do this. So I think that's an interesting counter to see how, teams deal with that, because that's going to start hitting probably the scouting report pretty soon. But like last night was a case where he was just open. Like it was just poor defense, and it really was that simple. But that wasn't the case all season. We've seen tough shot making all year from three, pull up threes in transition, off handoffs, leaning shots. The spot up stuff is clean. And it's really a lot of it, because we talked about this, I think, the last few years. What's his movement off the ball, where if, like, when he wasn't like actively, roaming from corner to corner or kind of constantly moving as like Duncan was. And remember, we used to talk about, like, I wonder what it would look like if he was moving off the ball like Duncan. If you watch him off the ball at this stage, he's everywhere. Like he's everywhere on the court. So I think that's kind of feeding into this as well, and it makes it harder for teams to scheme up against it. So the movement, the tighter base, and kind of just some of those counters against switches, kind of stuff that stands out to me.
Well, the other thing that may be playing into this when you talk about shooting from deeper is just increased strength, which we talked about coming into the season, where he's playing at his, well, I don't know if he still is, because he loses weight over the course of the year, but he came into this season at his highest weight that he's been. So again, we talked about, and again, you identified the shot change. We talked about it. I talked to him about it in training camp, and he did it for, to be able to get off the shot quicker. For sure, that's helped him in that regard. I want to go through some numbers here, because this kind of emphasizes the point. So right now, Tyler is 19th in the league in scoring at 24-1. He's actually tied with Kyrie. If you look at guards that are ahead of him right now, LaMelo is the top scoring guard in the league. But again, we saw that against the Heat too. A lot of this is just high volume stuff. And he's shooting 43% overall, 35.6% from three. Shea is next in terms of guard scoring, 29.8, shooting 50.7%. Obviously, he's incredibly efficient inside the line, 34.4%. Luka, I guess we're calling him a guard, is shooting 45%, 34% from three. Fox, is next in the guard line. He's 7th overall in scoring, averaging 27.2, 49.2, 35.5. Anthony Edwards, averaging 26.2, 44.3. He's upped his three-point attempts to where Tyler's are at, 10.6, 42.3. Dame Lillard, averaging 25.9. I mean, look at the names we're talking about here. 25.9, averaging, shooting 45.1% from the floor, 37.7% from three. Jalen Brunson, 25.2. 48.8%, 40.9% from three. Jaylen Brown, again, who's the guard in that? I guess he's technically playing the three if you want to categorize him that way, but still 25.2 points. He's shooting 33.3% from three. Devin Booker, we're going to see her on Saturday. 25 points a game, 44.5%, 34.8% from three. Tyrese Maxey, who Tyler is often compared to. He has played now 14 games this season. 24.9 points, but just 40.9% and just 30.5% from three. Cam Thomas, who has emerged a little bit, which you kind of expected. There's not really anybody else to emerge in Brooklyn. And he's averaging right now 24.7 points, 46.1%, and 38.9% from three. And then the guard right ahead of Tyler for scoring, barely, Donovan Mitchell. 24.3 points, 45.5%. That's Tyler's shooting at a higher clip, 46.7, and he's at 40.2% from three. Tyler's at 42%. Tyler's shooting a better percentage from the line, averaging more rebounds, averaging more assists, averaging fewer turnovers. I mean, again, I'm not saying he's better than Donovan Mitchell, but if you just put their two statistical profiles in a box and isolated it from everybody else, you would take Tyler's numbers right now. You would not take Tyler's record. Okay. And again, that's not all on him. That's on the rest of the team. But it does give you an idea of the company he's in. He has elevated into a different class here, and he's done it by taking a high volume of 3-point shots. And you mentioned this, and I want to touch on this. LaMelo is taking 13.1 threes per game, but of course he's taking more shots overall. Tatum 10.6, Edwards 10.6, Hero 10.3, Brandon Miller's taking 10.9 threes a game. Steph 10 even. I mean, he's taking, as you mentioned before the show, he's taking more threes per game than Steph.
And he's 0.1% better in efficiency from three than Steph Curry. So that really shows the companies in. But that feeds into the stuff that we're talking about with the shot profile. The fact that he's able to kind of really sustain this and get up 10 threes a game, I think is really important. Especially considering like we were talking about him getting these 3-point attempts up when we were considering the new role and him playing off the ball. But like, I really want to make it clear, like that stuff, like he's getting spot up threes. Like that's fine. But like, he's not playing off the ball. Like that's not where he's getting his shots. Like he's still hunting his own shots. It's off of handoffs. It's off of still some pick and roll pull-ups. He's still like such an on the ball player and able to do this. It's just that he's able to do both. He's able to kind of balance the offense in a way. And it really comes down. That's why we've been talking about the other guys in the team to really make it work for him. But the company really is crazy. I mean, we know we weren't going to do this episode because we were debating doing this episode of Tyler, but this really just shows that he's an all-star this year. I mean, if the Heat are a top, I guess, let's even say top 7 seed, I mean, Tyler Herro is their all-star. Like, there's no doubt about that. And I think you look at some of these numbers, I just don't know how it would even be debatable when a guy is averaging 24 points per game on this type of efficiency. And the key that we used to talk about, like Bam started getting to a point where he was like, obviously before what happened early in the season, we used to say he was like a shoo-in at this point. Like he was just one of those guys that was just going to be named to an all-star. But Tyler is a guy that doesn't have the respect of like the all-star company, that he needs moments throughout a season to get him in. Like there's certain guys that need record, like a good record to get in. Like Tyler just needs to have like flashes and moments like last night, moments like when he had 40, like these games where he's able to do this, I think is really good for that type of campaign. So I think that would be really good for him if he can get into the All-Star game. I think he deserves it. But it really comes down to sustaining this stuff because the guys you're mentioning have done this for so long and sustained it throughout an entire season and played. It comes down to him obviously staying healthy and playing and kind of just doing this for a longer portion of time. And I really think what we're seeing here, and we saw him do this at the beginning of last year, where he came out the gate really hot and he was averaging like 25 points per game. But that was over like a 7-game span where we were hyping it up. This is over 20 games here. Like, this is a giant sample size. And I really do think this is a sustainable formula. Like, I think this is something that can last. He's done it with Jimmy in the lineup. He's done it without Jimmy in the lineup. He's done it against good teams. He's done it against bad teams. This isn't this case as last year where he would just beat up on the Detroits and Charlottes of the world. Like, he's stepping up against good teams here, even if it's coming in a loss where it's not his fault. And the other thing I wanted to mention, Ethan, is this isn't just because the offense looks better, but he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done defensively this season. I know some of the numbers, if you look at some of the advanced stats, it's not going to jump off the sheet. Mainly because those numbers early in the season from the starting lineup tanked for everybody. It tanked numbers for everybody across the board. It's because of those bad losses, like the Magic one and all those ones. But Tyler's defending really well this season. There was some plays we didn't get to talk about from that Boston game because obviously they got blown out and we weren't talking about positives, where he was guarding Jason Tatum. And there was some possessions there where he was just really locking up in isolation and staying with it. He's been really good in team defense, jumping passing lanes, doing all that stuff. He rebounds above his size. That stuff's important too here. Like, he's really playing a role defensively here, and he's playing into transition. It's leading into better, efficient offense. So credit to him. Like, this isn't just like a season where he's scoring well and shooting well. Like, he's playing really good basketball just in general in all forms of it.
Well, we'll try to make the early All-Star case here in a second on the other side of this. And then there's something else that he did last night that was impressive, but it happened after the game. Before we get to that, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Water Cleanup. If you've got a leak in your home, your place of business, reach out to Water Cleanup of Florida. You can find them at WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com. They'll handle everything from the preventative, or if the leak is already there, they'll detect it and they'll do the damage assessment if there is any damage. They service the entire state of Florida from Boca Raton, entire Tri-County area for Shore, Dade, and Broward. Reach out to them today. Our friends Michael, Robert, his team, more than 100 5-star reviews on Google. So check them out at Water Cleanup of Florida. Again, that's WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz, they got the guts. I want to do this quickly here because when I mentioned him as an all-star yesterday, people were like, well, there's too many guards in the East, okay? But some of this is reputational, all right? So I'm not going to argue against Jaylen Brown being an all-star. Boston honestly should get as many as they can. Derek White is going to be in the mix because of Boston's record for sure. Donovan Mitchell, I just mentioned that Tyler's numbers are right there with him, but he's got more of a reputation. He's been to all-star games before, and obviously they have a better record right now. Jalen Brunson, the New York bias, but also his numbers do suggest that he should be an all-star this year. Okay, so those guys are all in the mix. Dame Lillard, Milwaukee's come on a little bit. They've kind of righted the ship. Tyler's numbers are right there with Dame's this season, but also Dame had that moment against the Heat where against Tyler's team specifically. So that stands out a little bit. Obviously, I think Dame probably gets put in ahead of Tyler because of reputation. But then I start to go down here a little bit, and a couple names. One is Cade Cunningham, who has had kind of a breakout season with Detroit. So he's averaging now 23.7 points, 45% from the floor, 38% from three. And Detroit's record has come up a little bit, although the Heat are still ahead of them. They're getting added a game to the schedule against them as well. But the other one, the people are, and then Zach LaVine. Tyler's numbers are better than Zach LaVine's. Although Zach's been much more efficient this season, but overall his numbers are somewhat better than Zach's. But the other one that keeps getting mentioned is Trae Young, and I'm looking at Trae's numbers, and I don't know how you put him in ahead of Tyler Herro. Averaging 38.4% from the floor, 30.6% from three. Yes, 12 assists. I understand that. Trae is a playmaker on that team, but the Heat's still ahead of Atlanta, right? Like they're right there with Atlanta. They're in that middle mix. And Trae's been left off before, by the way, because some people see through. And we're not talking about a guy who's a better defender than Tyler. Like that's not the case here. But do you think with that glut of guards there that actually he could get in, or it feels to me like he's going to end up being like the 13th or 14th guy?
So I really do. Record's going to matter. Like, it is going to matter.
Yeah.
Like, let's just start with Dame. If Miami is neck and neck with Milwaukee, could could you make the case that they should get 2 All-Stars and Miami should get 0? I mean, I don't know how that would really happen. So I think Tyler, weirdly enough, could end up getting in like over a Dame if the numbers were to sustain by the All-Star break. Like if you're seeing like where Tyler's numbers are literally right there with Dame's. The Trae Young one's interesting. I mean, right now Atlanta's 12-11 in the 6th seed, Miami's 10-10 in the 7th seed. So you're looking at that, the efficiency part. I mean, Atlanta's winning their games because of team-wide success. Whereas, like, it's not like Trae, like, it's not like a Cade situation where Cade's pretty much carrying that Detroit team and playing really well, and he's kind of, pushing them up the standings. Whereas Trae, the Atlanta's just playing well, and Trae's kind of, in and out of things, and he's playing the playmaking role and stuff. But I do feel like, I mean, Tyler's having a better season than Trae Young. Like, if we're doing, and this is what the point you made about like the seniority thing, about like just like the reputations. It is messed up because I could see that. Like I could see, like, if you're looking at on a piece of paper and you see Trae Young and Tyler Herro, you may see a lot of people just pick Trae Young. So that's why the record, I mean, they can't be a playing team for this really to work out. If they can find a way to get into the top 6 by All-Star break, there's a much better chance for Tyler. Now, if you're saying like, now if we're doing the record thing, I don't see a way Cade could get in over Tyler if the numbers were to sustain and stay the same. I mean, yeah, they jumped in record. They're not 15th anymore. They're 11th. But, like, how do you make that case with what Tyler's doing? And like I said, I really do think the flashy moments matter. Like, the 7 threes in a quarter, the 40-point game, like all of that type of stuff feeds into this. Like if he was just averaging a consistent 24 every night and it was just kind of low key, I could see them looking over it. But it's going to be hard to overlook this when he's kind of like, he's all over, social media every night, every time he's kind of doing a flashy play or having a flashy moment. Tyrese Maxey's another interesting one. Like I if he plays more games, it gets the points per game up. I could see them trying to throw a Philly guy in there. Does Paul George make it? Like, no, right?
Yeah,
like, he's not even gonna play enough games. Like,
see, I don't think so, but I feel like Maxey was anointed before the season.
Right.
And some of the issue here is that there are not a lot of bigs that are deserving. And this could be a situation where people who are not watching the Heat this year and who assume that Bam was going to be an automatic All-Star, that Bam gets in, even though this season's been a struggle for the most part. And it's actually Heat fans who are frustrated that they chose the wrong guy. That's not the first time that would have happened, by the way. That does happen from time to time where it's like, okay, you take someone from now. The Heat may not have the record where you have to take someone from them, but I could see it just being a positional thing where, again, I'm looking at the bigs in the Eastern Conference, and Franz Wagner's going to make it, I would think. And again, I wouldn't know if he's he's not big, but I mean, obviously, front court player. Tatum's going to make it. Giannis is going to make it. Beyond that, Cat probably makes it.
I think Mobley may get in. Like, they're going to give another Cav.
They'll give another Cav, and it's been Allen in the past at times, but I think it could be Mobley. But then, Vucevic has all-star numbers. The team's not very good. They're actually looking to move him. There could be a guy like a Jalen Johnson who's actually been the best player on Atlanta, in my view, that he could make it.
Scotty Barnes.
Scotty Barnes, again, team's bad, but the numbers are good. Siakam, team hasn't been what they expected. His numbers are good, though. So, but there's not as many slam dunk cases where it's kind of like, okay, you have to take this guy over Bam. I could see, I don't know, if Bam has like a good 2 or 3 weeks, I could see that him carrying back into contention. But then it's going to be like, well, okay, we kind of know who the all-star on the Heat has been this season. And there's also, sort of the Jimmy factor, but I don't think Jimmy will play enough games that it'll be, a real consideration. Plus, we know he wouldn't go. So it's but it may come down to Bam or Tyler for a spot. And if that's the case, then although, again, Tyler may be more deserving in this particular season, Bam, has the pedigree, and there are more open spots in the front court. But that gets into the final thing I want to close with here, because and we'll touch on this more in another episode. But the thing that impressed me about Tyler yesterday was the way that he stood up for Bam after the game, but also what he said, that Bam needs to stop reading about what people are saying. And it's just, we mentioned it after the game. The script has flipped here, because Tyler was the guy who let all that stuff get in his head before. He's acknowledged it. And now he's used it to fuel himself to the point where now there isn't much of it out there, or he can actually laugh at it. I've not seen a player come out the other side of a situation like this, like he has, where not only was his play criticized, but everybody wanted him gone, to be traded for the kind of players whose statistics he now has bested this season. He and some of the things we've laughed at, or people have laughed at in general, like of the category of players he put himself in, he is right there with them. And he just has everything but the reputation, and in this case, this year the wins. But it struck me that Tyler is kind of taking control of this team a little bit, just in the way that he conducts himself on the court, off the court. It is feeling more like Tyler's team. And I'll say this, and it's not, I don't mean to disparage Bam in this regard, because we know Bam, and Jimmy obviously doesn't want a lot of those responsibilities and hasn't, even when he was playing at the highest level. But Bam has never acted like he's totally comfortable with it, with the captaincy and all that kind of stuff. We are seeing a team that follows Tyler more than I think it ever has before. And I'm curious to see what that looks like going forward, but perhaps that will take some of the burden off Bam, since he doesn't like to do it. He doesn't like to have to be the guy to call other players out. Right now, if Tyler called another player out, they'd have to listen. He's playing at the highest level on the team.
He's just saying all the right things this season. Like, it started with media day, where he came out the gate and kind of said the right things about himself, and then you've seen him kind of take control of the team. Where there was the game against Detroit where he came out after the game and stuck up for Spo, where he said players have bad games, like Spo's allowed a mistake, and kind of really back Spo. Then you see this kind of Bam going through this, and he was talking about last night. He was like, I just liked how aggressive he was, how assertive he was. And he kept saying, like, just clearing his head. He needs to get all that out of his head. Stop reading whatever he's reading. He's a top 3 center in the NBA for a reason. So you just see him saying that, and it was funny because Bam in the locker room starts talking about what he was talking about. Tyler starts saying what he's doing, considering all the stuff that he faced versus the media, where everybody was going after Tyler, and the fact that he's feeding off of this. And it really felt like hearing both sides of Tyler and Bam talking about this really felt like the script has flipped here, where Tyler's really kind of taking control of as the voice right now, where like you said, players and people are listening to him because he's performing at a really high level. It's just natural. And he kind of was like noting that Bam is in his head a little bit. Bam kind of mentioned after the game he felt like he wasn't in his head. Shots just kind of rolled in tonight, but it does seem like there's some things there going on where he is a little bit in his head. But I don't know if this isn't going to be a case where like Bam gets stripped of captaincy and it's given to Tyler. Like this isn't. But I think just because you're a captain or not a captain, like you still need to have a voice in the locker room. And Tyler's more comfortable in his own voice right now than he's ever been in that locker room. Like he's more comfortable as a leader. Like they call him, they've called him the young veteran. Like he's like a veteran on this team now that like he does have a voice that matters. So when we used to talk about like when they used to have meetings and it was like Spo, Jimmy, and Bam came together to talk about this, no longer. It's Spo, Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler.
And that was also the case when Jimmy and Tyler kind of addressed themselves as 1 and 1A in that press conference. So there's been a lot of kind of breadcrumbs here in terms of where Tyler's taking a bigger role. And there's a lot of young players on this team, and something also that Spell mentioned yesterday about he wished the young players could have watched LeBron work during the Olympics. The one thing you can't take away from Tyler or at any point during this it has been his work ethic. He puts in there were concerns inside the organization the first couple of years about the off the court, but there was never concerns about whether or not he would put in the work on the court. And it does feel like all those things have kind of come together now. And look, he's 24 years old. I mean, he came in really young. He got thrown in the bubble, and he was all of a sudden like a sensation sort of before his game really had caught up to it. Well, his game's caught up to it. And if you look at the memes today, it's all Tyler Herro torching the Lakers. You're right. That may play in when we get to All-Star time. All right. Thanks to Brady. We appreciate it. Thanks to our sponsors, Water Cleanup of Florida, Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIV. We'll have a couple more off-day podcasts before the Heat host the Suns and the Cavs. So interesting weekend. Not expecting to see Durant on Saturday night. Have a good one, everybody.